Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Eros and Earth. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Megan.
Yeah. So I just finished your book, Orgasm, a memoir, and I was just telling you, but I devoured it in 3 days. It was an incredible book about your time in OneTaste, which you call a matriarchal cult. I was also in OneTaste, and so it was amazing to see your story and how it so deeply resonated and reflected my experience as well. So we have so much to dive into, but that was the initiation for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I mean, it's funny. The slice of people I was the most nervous about reading it was X1 Taste people. Like, would they agree with me and not? And that has been the group that has enjoyed it the most, I think. So that's been nice.
Yeah, and I think what I liked the most about it is how nuanced it was, right? Because so much of the coverage of OneTaste has been either villainizing, the court trials, the proceedings, the Bloomberg articles, or saints. We're amazing. We changed so many lives. And I think that the truth is much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's been my big frustration, like with this whole topic over the last decade. It's like people just want to put it in one or the other camp. And it's like there's a lot of things that actually have nothing to do with each other. Like a bad person can help people a lot, and that doesn't change that they help people. A good person can harm people. Like, these are like very abstract words. Funny enough, I learned about abstraction from Nicole. Like, the layers of abstraction was one of her lessons as a general semantics person. But that is, it's the science of brainwashing, and they did it in the cult, but then also even the narrative around it follows the same principles. Like, people can't understand, like, they're mixing up things, people being everyone who has a strong opinion, basically.
Right. And your book really reminded me of the quote, we're hurt in community and we're healed in community. And sometimes at the same time. Right?
Yeah.
I think that was my experience too with OneTaste. It was such incredibly alive years. I learned so much. It completely altered the course of who I became, what I did with my world. And there were things that were really confusing and hurt, and places where I feel like I lost my own moral compass and had to integrate afterwards.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was a so-called left-hand path as advertised.
So let's start with where we were when we started. So you, in the book, you were in your early 20s, right? You're in New York. You're looking out for personal growth. Tell us more about who you were when you first started this journey.
I'd say since high school, I was very obsessed with fixing myself, in quotes, like I had anxiety. On the one hand, I think I had a normal level of existential angst. On the other hand, I did have like some pretty severe social anxiety. So I was somewhere in that range. And because of that, I was like, I will do anything to like change my life. I can't live this boring existence or this like, inhibited existence. So I was like kind of ripe for being plucked out of reality. I was like, I guess, desperate for change. And I had already been following OneTaste because I watched Nicole's TED Talk in 2007 when it came out. My book starts in 2012 where, I was 23, lost my first and only job, really, just got dumped by my girlfriend after a drug experience. And then the Mayan calendar said the world was going to end, like that. There's all these things, which like, whatever. I'm going to like, because a lot of people ask me like, at what point did you know it was a cult? I was like, well, I knew before I went in. I didn't realize how bad, what that really meant, but like I was ready for something extreme. And if it wasn't doing mushrooms every day, it was going to be doing something that I thought would change my life. And it did, for better and for worse.
Yeah, you were ready. That's it's wild how similar our stories was. I was also 23 when I started. I was also just on the back of a breakup. Yeah, and just so bored with reality. Like, it felt like I had been following all the rules for so many years. And I was like, if this is the way the rest of life is going to be, I'm so bored. Like, there's got to be more here.
Yeah. And, on the one hand, I think that is what lent to the magical enchanting quality of when you're leaving monotonous existence and finding this really like high definition, super fun, like reality show style community. Like it feels like you found, home. To use the cult language, it feels like you found home for the first time. Or, I remember at different stages of my life, but especially then, it's like constantly feeling like this can't be what life is, like to put on a suit and tie and go into an office, or like whatever the thing is, or like pay everything I own, or everything I earn in like New York rent, or whatever there's different versions of this, but like early adult angst of like, this can't be life. And One Taste just felt like a huge relief. Honestly, I still feel like that sometimes when it comes to the bureaucracies of real world. But like, yeah,
Oh,
and I remember on the other side, on the dark side of things, like when I was really in One Taste, it was like, oh, we somewhat consciously manufacture this experience. We being like when I was in the cult, right? Like, so that was what I covered in the middle part of the book. It's like that's where the enchantment kind of dropped for me, in that like, oh, we're kind of manufacturing what seems like a magical experience to some degree.
yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get to the middle, I want to stay with like, what was it about One Taste that really enchanted you? What drew you in? And I'll share mine too.
Yeah. I mean, all of One Taste marketing, I think, like, was so perfect in this regard, for me at least, in that, you know, sex sells. Like, there's that shiny wrapping that everyone's drawn to some degree. But what gets you to stick is the connection. Like, even Nicole's TED Talk, it's like, it has orgasm in the title. So a young man clicks on it, or most people click on it. And then you realize she's redefining it in her, like, general semantics, brainwashing style of like, oh, now it actually means deeper connection, which you're not going to advertise to most young people as something they would buy, but you advertise sex and then offer connection. Now they're hooked. And for me, that was exactly it, because I never even considered that I was lacking in connection, which I was. I thought I had anxieties and other labels, and like, yeah, they sold me what I thought I wanted, and they gave me something that made me stick. And it was, that product was delivered, so to speak, just with strings attached.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I can relate. My first experience of One Taste was walking down the street in San Francisco, and there used to be a big Venn diagram on the wall, and it was orgasm. What was it? Oh no, it was like sex, wellness, and in the middle was orgasm. And I was just like, what is happening in here? It was like the boldness of just having that on a huge wall in the middle of downtown San Francisco. I was like, these people, there's a freedom there that I can taste, that it feels like a freedom. And then I also remember people's eyes that had been in One Taste for a while. They were so present, and so like you could see through to your soul was the feeling.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, that was a huge selling point for me. Like, it seemed like everyone had their life together and didn't have any of the deeper existential questions that I did. I realized that wasn't really the case, once I got in, but it's like the ability to connect, the ability to empathize. Like, for me, the initial events, it seemed so crazy to me that people could empathize to the degree that they could feel what you're feeling. Like, just like basic empathy was beyond me. So like this group of people that trained their empathy to feel what you're feeling to the degree that they could ask you a question on that you were thinking about. It's like, wow, these people are psychic. Like, I learned that wasn't really the case. It's kind of a skill anyone could develop, but it was so foreign to me.
Right. Well, and it's foreign to most of the world.
Yeah.
Like, so much of the world is not honing the skill of deeply feeling another person in your own body. But that's literally what orgasmic meditation is training you every day on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I ask, do you speak about your One Taste experience much, like publicly?
Not a lot. I've done one podcast episode on it and a little bit of writing. I've written 2 books, and I touch on it briefly in both books, but it's more about my journey.
Gotcha.
I feel like I moved on with my life after One Taste. Like, I moved to Bali, I started a coaching business, and I haven't done a lot of public speaking about it. And I also think I've been nervous to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I really want to hear about what it's been like for you, because I know this book took you 10 years. You got a lot of pushback from it. What was it like for you to decide to write this book?
Well, it took many different phases. I'll say I asked you just because it feels refreshing to like speak about this, like from, with someone who gets it. Because like, and I even mentioned this in the book briefly, like, I get hate mail from both sides. Like, I'm like, how could you say anything about orgasm changing your life? Like, you're still brainwashed. And then like the other side, obviously, are like the pro One Taste people. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like more of the current reality, I should say. Initially, it was like, I just wanted to write kind of an eat, pray, love type of book, but for men, like where I found myself kind of thing. And it just so happened that One Taste I thought was like, I mean, it was my actual journey. I thought maybe it was going to be phase 1 of what would be a book, or, it would just kind of be in the background of me like learning certain things. So like the beginning of my book has like a bit of a different tone than the end. I wrote them in different. The beginning of the book I wrote 10 years ago. The latter part I wrote in the last couple of years. So I'm 10 years older, so they might just feel different. At least I notice it when I reread it.
No,
Maybe
actually,
no
now
one
you
else
say
does.
that, I definitely noticed the difference in tone.
Yeah, I changed a lot from when I started the book till when I finished it. But, it went through different phases. Like there was a version I was going to write with Nicole, which basically would have been one taste propaganda, truthfully. Even after I left, I found it hard to be critical. There was a period where it would have been really scathing, maybe. Maybe I never got to that point. But like, yeah, ultimately I ended up what I think is a pretty neutral take without hiding anything or protect anyone.
And why was it so important for you to write this book? It was a real labor of love, I can imagine, after 10 years.
Honestly, it's just at some point I had invested so much time that I better finish it.
Mm.
And of course, when I started, I didn't think One Taste would get the publicity that they got. In fact, when I first started speaking about my, so-called sex cult experience, like in 2015, so like a year after I left, I remember people saying like, "Oh, you can't just say that about some wellness company. Like you can't just like call them a sex cult. Like, what are you talking?" And like, now the narrative is totally flipped. I remember actually looking for a book deal back in 2015, and someone in publishing said like, "You can't just accuse a group of being a sex cult." Like, that it was like so taboo. And now the narrative is complete opposite, which is just funny. I didn't expect to see any of the criminal stuff, obviously. And that has maybe taken, that's probably why most people search for my book. But that was never my intention. I wanted to write like an Eat, Pray, Love type of thing, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. In my book, I affectionately call this the sex cult years. And affectionately is important to me because there's a lot of warmth in that time.
Yeah.
I'm also just aware anyone listening to this podcast might be like, wait, back up. What are you talking about? What is One Taste? What is Orgasm? So let me just give a quick synopsis. One Taste is a wellness company that it lasted about 20 years, rose in popularity, peaked in 2015, 2017-ish. And then a big Bloomberg article expose came out in 2018, followed by FBI investigations that led to I'm not going to call it a downfall because there's still people working in this, but the shrinking of the company. So that's the storyline arc, and you can look up One Taste if you want to know more. Do you want to add anything to that overall background on One Taste?
Oh, well, I should add, in case anyone doesn't know, the founder was convicted last year and is in prison along with her second, who was my mentor, who I mentioned in the book. And I do feel on the positive side, let's say, they did have a pretty unique set of skills that they shared when it comes to human connection.
Yeah, I agree with that. Right? It was a place to genuinely train your empathy, your intuition, your emotional range and capacity to hold sensation. That's very real training in those domains.
Totally.
You called it a matriarchal cult on your tagline in your book. And I've never heard someone describe One Taste as a matriarchal cult, but it really resonated with me. Where did you get that?
For me, entering, it was here. And one of the things that was actually intoxicating and alluring about it was that here was a group, on the one hand, run by women, around female values. One of their adages was we're 51% feminine, so that was appealing to me, especially at where I was idealistically as a 23-year-old. Also looking at society is this patriarchy of everyone's competing with each other and we're all striving for money to spend on things we don't need. I conflated a lot of ideologies that are appealing to a young man in New York. But what I also see is and there's a line in the end of the book said by Om Rapani, who became my friend in this period, where you, in One Taste, regardless of morality, you really learned how to handle the feminine. You really learned about the feminine side of consciousness or the unconscious, which to what you said earlier, these are things that are totally foreign concepts to most people. They don't have to be, right? There's nothing actually magical about learning high degree empathy. It's not normalized in society, whether you politicize it and call it patriarchal or not even that's my ideology anymore. But to me, it was a different world that represented, this is what a world could look like from a totally different perspective if women ruled, so to speak. But it still has a dark side, just like conventional society. It just looks different. It doesn't make it better. And I didn't mean to go political with it, but this was part of this is just how I simply looked at the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine it like this little matriarchal bubble inside of a broader patriarchal world. And I think that's one of the most important things I got from it is like how to develop my own feminine side, my ability to really embrace the ups and the downs of my emotions, trust my intuition, know that it has to feel good to be good, like that I don't have to just push through. Like there's so many things that I got around cultivating my feminine through OneTaste.
Totally. Yeah. And even
And,
as a man, like, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, and feminine in all genders.
I'll say like the biggest healing for me came from getting in touch with my so-called feminine side, my feelings, sensation, being okay with chaos, all of that stuff. I mean, there's so many, like, even looking back for me, like kind of mind fucks about the OneTaste teaching, in that they taught this so well. They taught like you had this in the community, you had this kind of like laboratory or playground where you can like test out all these relational things that you might read in a book, but you can't actually do, but you could do it all the time in this group of people that have nothing else to do but
Explore
raise the
relating.
sensation. Yeah. Whether sexually or communication wise. But even like the thing you just said, it's like, it's a very beautiful and important thing, I think, for most people to be healing. But in OneTaste, even that was used as a manipulation. It's like you were safe to be in your feminine so long as you followed the rules. Like, and one of the ironies, well, many ironies in OneTaste, but like the structure was so masculinized and rigid that like, they glorified being in the surrender position, but they were always the top, right? Like, you didn't really have, and you could argue this is how any power dynamic works, but there was like some not practicing what they preach at the high level, essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of one of my last conversations with OneTaste. They were really pushing me to work more directly for the company. And I said no. And they were saying, you just need to surrender to the orgasm. You need to surrender to the orgasm, right? Like your big problem is you're too driven by self-will. And now as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, right. But the surrender is one-sided.
Yeah.
There's still someone who's not
Totally.
surrendering in that conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like, yeah, the power structures were so rigid, and everyone was asked, not that everything can be looked at masculine, feminine, but like the person speaking to you in that moment was really trying to assume a hyper masculine role, so to speak, because they were taking it from someone above them who was reporting to Nicole, who is the topmost top.
Yeah, there's a lot in this, right? Like there's power, there's gender, I think what I'd love to hear about is, so I have my experience as a woman in this matriarchal cult. What was it like for you as a man to be in it?
At first, I found it relieving because I felt like I was seeking personal development from, what I guess would now be called like the pickup artist world, because that's what was available to men in 2010. And I always felt like this just doesn't feel right. Like even as like a closed off young man, I felt like there should be more empathy, or shouldn't be like constantly gaming each other and looking at each other like robots, which is like what that world is, even though it's a launching point for most men's personal development, even to this day. So at first it was such a relief to be like in a place where I thought, oh, like this is not the patriarchy. Like we could all cooperate and like be open with our feelings. But then, I uncovered this like halfway through the book, like when I was actually on the OneTaste team, it's like, oh no, all the power dynamics are the same. In fact, my female mentor said, oh, you need to be more dominant. Like, you have to, I was like, I thought that was part of like this other thing that we're not doing. Like, I thought it's all about connection. I felt very confused. And this was like maybe the beginning of me realizing like, okay, in a woman run world is not actually, you see the same darkness still exists, whether you call it darkness, so that's just human nature to have hierarchies. So anyway, the latter half of my time as a man was like, oh, I actually need to re-embrace masculine values that I thought were bad when I came in, often in spite of what OneTaste was teaching me. And that's kind of like, I learned a lot following them in the first half, and I learned a lot denying them or going against them in the second half of my time. And masculinity being one of those topics.
Right. I remember being 3 years into OneTaste. I stayed 4.5 years. Being 3 years in and looking around me like, there are very few strong masculine leaders still in the upper ranks of OneTaste. And a lot of men in the beginning, very few men as it gets further along. And I was like, there's got to be something that's just not touched in men here, or that's not being met here. And I remember then when
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, then I left OneTaste and met my husband. a while later who had been studying masculine, feminine dynamics, but both of them. And he was just like, yeah, he just wouldn't accept some of the things that I had taken as truths inside of OneTaste. Like if I don't want to, then I don't have to. It's all about my feelings and some other things, and I just realized in meeting him outside of the matriarchal, like, oh, we actually need that strong masculine as well as the feminine.
Totally. Yeah. A lot of what I had Om Rapani, what I kept of his dialogue in the book was kind of explaining these things. Like, this is something he said, he knew Nicole very well. And one of the things he said is like, Nicole sets up OneTaste is like, she's the queen of a court. And like, in order to dance with her ladies, because she has the most turned on women, a man has to follow her rules. And I think the more powerful the organization got, the higher, or I should say, the more submission people had to show. And I think for an inherently masculine individual, it becomes harder and harder to do that without, you're fighting, everything in that testosterone leads us to do is to be autonomous and not listen to authority. Right. So like, and I saw this even in the 2 years I was there, like one at a time, men would drop off, or even like strong-willed women would drop off, because if you stayed too long, you'd have to submit to the point where like you just couldn't do it. Whereas unfortunately, the people who I think were the most harmed were the really feminine individuals who could really open their hearts and go with the stroke, so to speak, and really surrender. And because of that, they did things that they wish they didn't do. Whereas like being masculine was kind of an insult in the OneTaste world. Like the more masculine minded people just couldn't do it. So they never, compromised to that degree.
Right. They never surrendered so deeply that then they lost something. Yeah. What I noticed through your book is that with OneTaste, there's this increasing level of commitment expected. And if you don't continue to increase your level of commitment, you get pushed out.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I heard from OneTasters when I was in OneTaste still was like, oh yeah, it's like they use the frog in the boiling water analogy. It's like you throw the frog in and you slowly turn up the heat, and it doesn't by the time it realizes the pot is boiling, it's too late to get out. And like OneTaste people would say that and laugh about how that's how they ended up in OneTaste and like spent all their money or whatever the thing is, because like that is how far it went, to the point where like we knew we had gone through all these, to different degrees, people had realized they've gone through all these compliance tests, they've passed through. And even though they know what happened, here they are totally committed to this organization. Technically, it's what you just said that I described in the book. Like the more authority or praise or the good stuff that OneTaste kind of had a monopoly on, like the good feelings, the orgasm, they could turn it on and off based on your compliance. So if they're going to give you more like a high status position, you have to really submit yourself. And that was kind of the battle that I had towards the end of the book that led to me leaving.
Right. Yeah, right. Your book really helped me see why, because I remember feeling like I was getting pushed out in a way towards my last year with OneTaste, and like not being included on women's WhatsApp threads and not being invited to certain things. And then I realized, oh, it's because I had stopped my level of commitment by not working for them and then not investing any more money, because I had
totally
drawn the line there.
That was one of the things that was like in my perception matriarchal about the group. It's like I've only been in one cult, but I've heard from like Scientologists or like other male run cults. It's like in OneTaste, there's like more force, whereas in OneTaste it was almost like middle school girl manipulation of like, oh, you don't want to do that, we're not going to yell at you, but now you're not invited. And like you feel the attention and fun and social reward being pulled away from you, and the only way to get it back is to commit your life, say you're going to work, say you're going to give more money, and then you get it all back.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't see that as clearly until I read your book. And I'm like, oh, that's what happened in that period of my life. Something that stuck out to me reading it as well is like, you really have broken down how brainwashing and cults work and the mechanisms of it. Did you do a deep dive of learning after you left on understanding this or processing, or how did you get?
It was on my to-do list to like really study it for 10 years. And I do read a lot. And like, I read the book that coined the term brainwashing, where he's talking about Chinese prison camps. And it was like, oh, all of that stuff happens in OneTaste. So like, I've picked up here and there, but no, I didn't really do a deep dive on it. I did go to ICSA meetings for a little bit, which is kind of like a 12-step for ex-cult members. International Cult
Support.
Salvation Association. So
Oh, okay.
support, or maybe support. Yeah, support makes more sense. But
Salvation.
like, yeah,
Interesting word. Yeah. Okay.
I found it to be so culty, ironically, but it's mostly like cult survivors, family of cult members. But anyway, yeah, I didn't really study too much beyond like pop psychology, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's helpful to see it broken down. And yet,
Yeah.
even seeing it, do you regret it?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, I would like to say no, but it's no with like an asterisk and like hesitation because, I mean, if you asked me a few years before I had kids, I thought it was like the coolest thing. It was still my, like 5, 6 years ago, I still thought it was a fun topic to talk about of people. I felt proud of myself that I had gone through this kind of adventure and whatnot. Now as a family man, I feel like less like I don't, it's not. I'm ready to just let this be in my past. I just happened to write a book about it, so like I don't know. I won't say that I actively regret it because I learned so much and it is my life, so it doesn't help to regret it. And I think regardless of how they obviously have hurt people, so I don't want to diminish that, but I don't find it useful to like hold on to I should have done something different or that I'm a victim, at least for myself. So I would like to say no, but no with an asterisk.
Huh. What changed for you when you had kids
Um,
around this topic of regretting it?
well, I think in general, my range of, or like how out there I want to be greatly decreased just because I know my kids are going to obviously grow up with the internet. Like, I don't know, I don't want that to be my thing. Like, to be honest, it's not even just with OneTaste. Like, I was more of a sex educator 8 years ago, and like, I don't even want to go in that direction anymore. Like, I guess I could say I grew up. As most people, I became more conservative as I got older. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I did want to say,
makes sense. We both have a 2 and a 4-year-old. So we're both in a completely different season of life than when we were in our OneTaste days. And like my OneTaste is our wild early 20s, open to anything. And now being responsible for 2 little beings and a life it's a different season.
yeah, totally. I will say, in a somewhat indirect way, I think a lot of what I learned and how I grew in OneTaste was very useful for parenting. Maybe some things negative also that are less obvious, but like being able to empathize and embrace chaos. Not to say I do it perfectly, but also even like dom sub stuff, which I was introduced to when at OneTaste and through my friend Om Rapani. Like, obviously not in like a kinky way, but like power dynamics are power dynamics, and like part of being a good parent is being able to hold the container, so to speak. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad I learned that, if only conceptually.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. There's so many transferable skills from OneTaste that can be applied with young kids and sensing their needs. I remember holding our baby and just feeling so connected and like I felt psychic. Like I'm like, oh, I know what she needs. Like I know that she's hungry. I know that she's tired. And I also know that I really developed that skill with OneTaste.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And actually, I mean, to go kind of in a philosophical direction, like, a lot of the things that OneTaste represented, I think both accurately and not accurately, is like the so-called feminine is so alien. Like the idea that a woman can sense what her baby needs in the moment, that should be normal. But like, unless you've had a baby and are like in touch with your feelings to a greater than average degree, it probably seems like strange, which is why a group like OneTaste, who teaches that skill of like basically being an intuitive parent, or that's one application, like it seems magical again, but that should be normal. And and even like in some of Nicole's talks, she would talk about that, why the reason why women are more vigilant is because they evolved to be mothers who can have their antennas open to sense what their kids' needs. Ironically, children were like very frowned upon in OneTaste, because you can't control someone who has a child to take care of, usually.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not a great place for a kid to grow up inside of a sex cult. A lot of wild things happening in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also like, from the OneTaste end, like someone with a small child is not a good prospect because they're not going to drop everything and move into your house. Right. So
there's always going to be something that's more important than OneTaste, which is their child.
Which is also why they didn't like pre-existing romantic relationships and all of that stuff.
Right. Right. I left when I was 27 just because I was like, I want to get married and have kids. And that does not feel compatible with this lifestyle. I remember having like really big tears. And for a couple of days, I questioned, like, maybe I don't need to have kids. Maybe I can just be on an alternative path my whole life. But that lasted one day. And I was like, no, I've always wanted to be a mother. I need to create a more stable life. It is time to leave this and find something that's more steady.
So were you pushed out, or was it kind of like you decided not to work for them and then you made this decision and then you left?
It was both. So I quit. I was a leadership consultant. I quit my consulting job in 2017 and I lived on the land for a year. And I did a little bit of work for them, but not a lot. I said no to, I didn't want to be on staff. I already felt like there were some things happening. I'm like, years later, I don't want my name to be associated with this company. So I was like, I don't want to be on staff. I've spent all my money. I don't have a job. This is where my commitment ends. And that was, I think, the moment. I also was there when the Bloomberg article came out and felt the downfall. And I was there when the centers were closing and Nicole sold the company. And yeah, so I felt what was crumbling. I felt an ending.
That's one.
And I also wanted to do my own thing. That was the only thing. Like, I was like, I've learned so many skills. I want to create it into my own experience.
Yeah.
I don't want to follow the rules anymore.
Yeah. It's like, you have to, because I'm sure, I don't know if you directly or indirectly got it, but like that's like your ego talking, that you want to like do things for yourself, like you have to be kind of a strong-willed person who doesn't surrender all the time to escape that. That what you just described, like that's one phase of OneTaste that like I that's kind of been a dark spot for me, like what was going on for people. Because I'm sure I knew a lot of the people you lived with on the land who joined when I was around and then are still there. So that's still like a black hole. People who I used to be really close with, like what was it like with everything crumbling, like closing down their centers and all that stuff?
It was so interesting because the year before it was a huge expansion and kind of peak. Like I remember I was living in London and flying every month back and forth to the land to help facilitate the intensives. And it was just like, there's so much energy and aliveness. And then 2018, everything felt like it was starting to consolidate. Like a lot of people were leaving, programs weren't selling out as much. There was a lot more like who can be trusted feeling, like who's in the in group and who's not. Yeah. And with that, like I remember living on the land and it was led by one team and then the exec team came in and fired everyone overnight and told them to leave because they're like, this is off. And that was really disturbing for me as they were my friends. And I think there was this sense of like, we're off, something's off, but we don't know where it is and what's happening. And Nicole was also moving. She'd sold the company and she was like moving away from the company. Yeah.
I'd imagine a lot of people left all at once and then the other people who stayed became like hyper committed.
Yeah, very committed. A lot of people that were really committed moved to the land because as the centers were closing. I remember recording, it was the intro to Ohm video. It was me and my boyfriend recorded the intro and it was like this big thing. And then literally that week, the article came out. Yeah, to be part of the downfall was a wild moment.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So I'm curious where you are now. Like you left OneTaste. You're also a coach, right? Mm-hmm. You're also a coach and a facilitator. Yeah. Yeah. What did you build after?
Well, I guess on theme, I was coaching basically anyone at the time around sexuality, relationships. At some point, I don't remember exactly when, but in, I guess, re-embracing my masculinity, I decided to focus on men. Oh, this is also triggered by, I was writing the book, but also Me Too happened, I guess, 2017, something like that. And that inspired me to focus on men, which has been, most of what I did in the last decade. I do coach more married couples now, I guess, because I'm married with kids. Just you coach what you live, I guess. Yeah. And, I'm doing other things now too. And
amazing. Yeah, me too. I went into coaching. It's funny. I remember this distinct moment in one of the intensives, we were asked to state our purpose. And the punchline was that everyone's purpose is to be a messenger of orgasm in their different flavors. Someone's going to be the messenger of orgasm in network marketing. Someone was going to be it in their corporate role. And it's funny to look now that like, oh, I'm still doing that. It's just in a different way. I still have a podcast, Eros and Earth. My books are all about Eros. I coach on Eros and aliveness, the force of aliveness.
Yeah. And, I guess separating that, orgasm or whatever you want to call it isn't monopolized by OneTaste. I think that's one of the things that gets hard when people are thinking about leaving. Like, you kind of forget that's true. Obviously, everyone knows that going in, but it's one of those things you kind of forget when you're like really in the soup.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good point. That was one of my favorite parts of your book, actually, is when you did the road trip and you met all the people and you're like, oh, it's not what I found inside of OneTaste is not limited to just OneTaste. It's everywhere. There's a lot of people doing a lot of interesting deep dives.
Yeah. And honestly, like meeting, I mean, actually, I met a lot of people. I had to cut out a lot of people, but like meeting some kind of far out there, like hippie people in New Orleans and then in Sedona, I was like, oh my God, do I sound like that when I talk about Om? Like, if I sound like this, then like because like I could see that they felt what they were talking about was so true. Like, there was the guy with the aliens and the guy with like the healing energy. It was like, oh my God, I sound like this talking about Om. Like, it was the craziest. It was a nice mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Of like, there's so many different pockets of people who are deeply immersed in their own reality. And as you were saying, it's like you created this reality that you lived inside of for 2 years. And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say, because like what you described of like the downfall of OneTaste, like, and this is something I ended up like a little bit cutting out of the book, but there was this assumption in OneTaste that that we controlled all of reality. Like, I remember when sales dropped we were selling Mastery in New York. Sales dropped because we had sold everything to everyone that could possibly buy it. But then it was like, oh, we're off. It's like, oh, it must be like sales dropped because we did something, or like, someone died in our building because like we haven't been doing fear inventory. It's like somehow like everything, like somehow we controlled all of New York City's behavior through what our oming practice, which is like so ridiculous. By the time, it's just what people assumed, like. Yeah. We didn't own enough, and that's why the Bloomberg article came out, or whatever the thing is,
Yeah.
It's just, interesting cult stuff.
Yeah. And like with all good messages, there's a nugget of truth in it, right? Like, your energetic fields does literally impact the people around you. And it's a nugget, not the whole truth.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that helped me leave, is I got involved with Mama Gina and some other teachers. And I was like, oh, there's lots of pockets that feel very orgasmic to me that aren't just OneTaste. It's a big wide world out there.
I mean, for me, it was like so basic of like, I took some acting classes and saw that my acting teacher had as good, if not better, intuitive insight as like any of my OneTaste mentors, or even Nicole. It's like, oh, if you train feeling your feelings, you can pick up on people's feelings, right? It's not a OneTaste thing necessarily.
Yeah, right. Like, there's some universal skills. So when someone finishes their book, your book, how do you want them to feel? Like, what do you want them to take away from this?
I would love for them to recognize how malleable their sense of reality can be. Cults are a unique, or like, particularly insular version of it, but I think any ideological anything. I mean, I didn't dwell on this in the book, but like everything you see in politics and arguments on the internet, they follow the same kind of semantics principles that I think people are often blind to. In a cult, it becomes obvious because you end up like actually living with the people and separate. So, I mean, I guess in many ways, like understanding like how we create our sense of reality by confirming it with other people, that it's malleable and sometimes arbitrary. And I guess the truths of human nature, whatever I did cover in the book.
Yeah, that's such an important message, especially for right now and this moment where we have, online echo chambers that are ideologically matched, and we have AI that will agree with us and tell us we're right no matter what.
Yeah.
So it's a time where reality is really bending.
Totally.
And there's much less consensus around what is real.
Yeah. And in a way, like, it's always been like that, but technology is now showing you, like, 100 years ago, you probably saw the world the same as your next door neighbor. And now it's very unlikely that you see the world the same unless you watched exactly the same stuff on social media. So I think it's relevant just understanding where people come from and how unnatural life is now.
Yeah. Yeah. And your book gives language to how like brainwashing works, how reality is molded. And so hopefully people reading this now have some tools, some defense against that.
Yeah, I hope so. If only awareness and maybe a sense of humor around what you believe.
Humor. It's a good one.
Yeah. And then also, like, I guess one of the big pieces of human nature that I wish for people to take away, it's like, and a character in the book says this line, it's like, most people think that if someone can see into your soul, they must be a good person. In OneTaste, you learned someone can see into your soul and they might not have good intentions at all. And I think that's a really important thing. When someone reads your mind, you assume they must be great and morally clean, but it's not true.
No, it's a value neutral superpower that can be used with any intent.
Totally.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
Well, I recently moved the family to Spain, trying to live off grid and in community and as naturally as I think we can live in 2026, in the 21st century. I'm still coaching. I'm working on another book, more Jung inspired. I've studied a lot of Jung since leaving OneTaste. That's, an intellectual basis, I guess, of my coaching work. So I'm working on another book called Anima on the female side of the unconscious, which will be a more prescriptive book, which will draw on some lessons that I picked up on from OneTaste. Mm. And then other than that, like being a farmer, trying to live off grid. That's honestly how I spend most of my time these days, is like working the land.
Amazing. We have that in common too. I also got really into earth regeneration in the last few years and, planting my herb gardens and our vegetable gardens and permaculture and
awesome.
Taking a much more earth-based lens, but it's still connected, the feminine.
Yeah. My obsession lately has been composting, black soldier black compost. I won't bore your listeners with that, but like that's literally what I think about and spend my time on these days.
Okay, we should jam out on that after because I need a good composting solution. I tried to get one of those home things. It's not working. So awesome. Well, it was so nice to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining, for your story. Yeah, and just being so clear-eyed and wise and also open and vulnerable at the same time.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I hope this episode touched you. If you loved it, share it with a friend or family member, or you can leave a review to help get the word out. Thank you. Until next time, root down, open up. Eros and Earth.